There's been a heated debate about Trump's bloodbath speak, and Germany wants a ban on Muslim immigration. Welcome to Riks Roundup, Peter and Scarlett. Peter, what's the deal with the Trump situation and Trump story?
Well, in one of his speeches, Donald Trump mentioned how there would be an economic bloodbath if Biden's economic policies were continued after the election. And the media, or many left-leaning media anyway, across the world, reported this by claiming that Trump had predicted an actual bloodbath. So this was so disingenuous that many people have seized upon this to open up the debate about the media in general, how biased they tend to be. And I mean, look at Donald Trump. You know, there's so much you can say and that so much you can accuse him of things that he has actually said that you don't need to make up stuff. Yeah, that's, I think, really worrying many people.
Scarlett, what's your take on how the media decided to frame this bloodbath speech from Trump?
Well, I'm actually sad that we see it's almost becoming a tradition that the media is framing a certain narrative as they see fit. And the problem is that people really underestimate how crucial and how influential media is. They are there to shape the public opinion, and it's not actually their role. Their role is to inform us so that you can make your own opinion based on facts. But if they cut out all the facts and they just select a few of them, you get a wrong image. And we see this happening over and over again. So the question we should raise, can we still trust the media? I highly doubt it.
Peter, do you think we'll see Trump derangement syndrome as we've seen during the Trump presidency again, where we have these more or less chaotic statements from the media on what Trump are doing? Of course, as you said, there are many things you can actually criticize him for, but spreading fake news, do you think that's something we will see more in this upcoming US election?
Oh, yeah, I think it's going to be 10 times as worse. And indeed, we'll see Trump derangement syndrome. If Trump orders an ice cream, I mean, that will probably provoke an outrage again, when there is so much you can actually criticize him for, and there's no need to be hysteric about things. I mean, more fundamentally, as Scarlett said, this really undermines trust in the media, and the same media that pretends to be able to act as objective fact checkers then completely go, out of bounds with this. And what they are really doing is, especially with people that are, let's say, not really educated, I mean, they won't trust anything anymore. And by this kind of reporting, people equate some crazy conspiracy website with established media, and they become much more receptive to all kinds of conspiracy theories. So this is actually quite problematic, even if it's only just one small example.
And I'm thinking that we're going to move on to the next part here, that the EU has actually closed a deal with Egypt on the issue of migration. The migration crisis to EU is still unparalleled, where we had over 1 million migrants coming to Europe last year. Now the EU has closed a deal with Egypt. Peter, what's going on?
Well, we see worse and worse figures here. There was one statistic out this week showing, I think, a 500% increase in illegal migration from Western Africa. And to respond to that, EU leaders are basically trying more of the same. After they have been throwing a lot of money to the dictator in Tunisia, they are now throwing a lot of money at the dictator in Egypt. And again, the fact that they give money would not be so bad, I think, if there would actually be something material in return. But it's not clear what Egypt, will do. They pretend that they will try to stop migration a bit more firmly, but I think it's unclear how different it will be from what Tunisia is currently doing, which is next to nothing.
Scarlett, what's your take? How bad is the migration situation to Europe right now?
Well, it is so bad that even in Germany, up to 76% of the people are voting in favor to ban migration from Islamic countries. which is unprecedented before. And it shows that the idea that we had previously in 2005 with the first wave of the migration crisis, the schaffen das, has been gone. People don't have faith anymore that we can make it because they see numbers increasing, unfortunately, both as well in, because I look at the statistics, they're both increasing in criminality, but unfortunately also a lot of people are scared that traditional values of of our democracy are not being respected anymore. So there's a need, or there's a wish for a ban to come on migration. Then comes, of course, the question, will the government listen to these statistics? I don't think so, because we already have seen previously that people ask for the borders to be better regulated, and yet it's still not happening.
So, Peter, do you think the politicians will listen and actually start securing the European borders? The Commissioner Ylva Johansson has been under heavy pressure for sacking the previous Frontex boss, and therefore the borders to Europe is basically open right now. What's the situation? How will the Commission respond to the migration crisis?
I think their mindset is so far removed from, doing what's actually working, that they continue the same old failed policies of the past, and giving a bit of money to a dictator at the outskirts of Europe, for example. While if you look at the Australian model, which means giving money to a neighboring country to allow that asylum requests are being processed over there, that has stopped illegal migration in Australia. And the United Kingdom has been trying to do that with Rwanda. So I think that's what really needs to happen. But because of ideology, the European Commission is refusing to consider this.
Scarlett, considering the great success of many conservative and nationalistic parties in the latest European national elections, do you think we will see any meaningful impact in the upcoming EU election with the national conservative and conservative movements we're seeing here in Europe on the issue of migration?
It definitely does give hope, because if we look at the polls throughout the whole Europe, we see that conservatives are rising, and it's very likely that we will see similar results in European elections, which means that we'll have more leverage in Parliament to get actually new rules and amendments that will better protect our borders and also better regulate the migration that is coming. So it's definitely giving some perspective.
You mentioned Germany before, that now a majority of the Germans, except for people voting the Green Party, want to see a ban on Muslim immigration. Could you please elaborate a bit on that, Scarlett?
Yeah, like I said earlier before, in 2015, the idea was we're schaffen das. And we see that in the past years, this hasn't happened. Instead, the criminality rates have increased. And also, out of a poll, the same poll shows that people fear that their democratic values and their values that are known to us here in Europe are not respected. So they lose that their identity in that sense will be lost. 76% is an unprecedented rate, and it really should be a wake-up call for those who are in place to govern us to do something with it.
So, Peter, what's your take on that number? 76% opposes immigration from Muslim countries to Germany. That's kind of unprecedented, right?
It is, and I think it's a consequence of the migration chaos that we see. Democracies in Europe that say, look, we can accept these migrants, but not these migrants, and democracy that give people that have been denied asylum an order to leave the territory, but then these people completely ignore it. I mean, this is leading to these kind of results in opinion polls. People saying, look, let's look at the kind of migration we prefer. And then, they look at people from Muslim countries and they say, well, culturally, there's less of a match than, migrants from, for example, Ukraine, because people are in itself, I think, against migrants, but they are frustrated by the migration chaos, by the fact that democratic policies are not being implemented. And I think this really needs to change before we head to more worrying situations.
Scarlett, has the multicultural experiment caused a division between citizens in Europe?
Yes, I do think so. And I think the fact that 76% in Germany, outside of the Greens, are actually wanting to have a ban on migration. But I really want to stress out that I really agree with what Peter said, that also good Muslim migrants that come here are being the victim of those who actually are ruining it for it. And I think what part of this issue is because the government didn't provide a good way for people to integrate into society. So it caused a lot of frictions. And if I look at other problems, for example, there's not enough places to household people. I keep repeating it. I'm from the Netherlands. Within the Netherlands, people don't have a place to live. A lot of people my age live with their parents because it's impossible to find a housing. And it gets a lot of frustration to see that people come from other countries. They get here asylum and they get, a special treatment because they're first in line to get a house. And given that we're living in a hard time, housing crisis, energy crisis, there's no more opportunity, there's no more means to give people a place in Europe.
And on the last subject here, Europe should go to a war economy, says a Belgian liberal politician. Peter, do Europe need to go to a war economy to tackle the current Ukraine crisis?
Well, clearly not. So that Belgian liberal politician is not only a Belgian politician, he's also the chairman of the Council of European Leaders, Charles Michel. So indeed, I guess to gain some attention, because he's not really always, receiving so much attention, he came with what you could say is a pretty hysteric statement that the European economy needs to shift to a war economy. I mean, what that means in practice is that factories would need to, start producing munition when they're not doing so, all kinds of military equipment. I think this is completely undermining any seriousness in the, debate on Ukraine. It is true that we need more ammunition production in Europe because Russia has shifted to a war economy. But if we would do the same, then we would, of course, completely undermine the economic basis that we need to ultimately, produce the tax resources to have effective militaries in Europe.
Scarlett, what do you think about this liberal politician's suggestion that Europe needs to be in a war economy?
I think it's terrifying. And it's not the first time that we hear a high level speaking that we should prepare for a war economy. Previously, we had an Admiral Bouwbauer saying that we need to prepare for war. These are not words we should take lightly.
And looking, how has the response been to it? You were saying, Peter, that it could be a counterproductive statement from him. How has the reactions been on his statement?
Well, actually, there has not been so many reactions because he's not taking all that serious anymore. Remember, this is a politician that, announced that he would step down prematurely from his function in order to run for the European Parliament elections. There was a lot of anger among European leaders. You don't do that if you have been nominated to such a top position. And then it became a complete farce when he changed and he said, well, you know what, I will not run for the European Parliament. After all, I will actually fulfill my full term. So I think people don't really take him that serious anymore, which is also a problem for the credibility of Belgium as a supplier of, people that occupy top European positions. But I think when it comes to the heart of his argument, yes, it is true that we have to upgrade our militaries, certainly in countries like the Benelux, Germany and Sweden. That's absolutely true. But this is very different from, moving to a quote unquote war economy. And indeed, as you suggest, if you're worried about Ukraine, if you're worried about Russia, which are legitimate worries, and we need to have a very strong military, we need to be armed to the teeth, so Russia doesn't even think of attacking us. But then to come up with this hysteric statements, I think, is a gift to pro-Russian conspiracy crazies that will, try to sell the story that European politicians are not serious and that we should not listen to any calls of having a strong military.
Thanks a lot to Scarlett and Peter and for this week's weekly Riks Roundup.